All right, section 5.5 starts on page 225. That's where it starts at. Okay, and this is talking about compounded interest. Okay? And what we do with compounded interest, it says interest that you earn in a savings account during an interest period is added to your account. Your new balance is used for calculating the interest for the next interest period, the interest period after that, and so on. So yesterday when we found the interest, what they would do is if they said it was done quarterly, for instance, which is every 3 months, they would add your interest in, and then that's your new balance. So that interest formula that we used yesterday, we're going to use too also today. We're going to add it in there and then calculate it again for the next quarter and so on. My one savings account that I have through First Western is done monthly, which means they calculate the interest and then they put it into my account, and then the next month they calculate the interest, put it in my account, so my account changes because I've added more money in there. Okay? Compound interest earns interest not only on the original principal, but also the interest earned during the previous interest periods. Earning interest on interest. Adding interest to an initial principal, thus forming a new, larger principal in the next period. This is the procedure for computing compound interest. And the first step in computing compound interest, the formula we have again, and this isn't new. This is one that I gave you yesterday. Amount equals the principal plus the interest. That formula I gave you yesterday, that was after we had found the interest and we added it in there, and that was it, right? Okay. Then it says again, the amount is the balance in the account at the end of the interest period. When you have the amount, you do a series of simple interest computations. To find the compounded interest, you find the difference between the amount and the count and the original principal. So what they're finding is that we're gonna, when we find how much compound interest we have, we're gonna figure out how much did you earn. Okay, so compound interest is calculated by taking the amount minus the original principal. What was principal again? Don't worry, Brian, I heard it too. It's probably from Mr. Klingbaum. What was the term principal? What did that mean again yesterday? The amount of money you started with. Right. Okay? So, if you turn to the next page, on page 226, now just so that you guys are aware of it, because some of you still struggle with this part, number 1 has A through J. So if you don't do that, that gets you some points. So, number 1 says, Liz Reynolds deposited $2,000 in a savings account that pays 8% compounded quarterly. Quarterly means every 3 months or 4 times a year. Okay, that's what that means. So when you see the word quarterly, that's every 3 months or 4 times a year. Complete the table to compute the amount in the account after 1 year. So if you look at what they have for number 1, they have interest for the first quarter. They take 2,000 times 0.08 times 1/4 equals $40. Okay, that's on the first line. They give that to you. Now the reason why they multiplied it by 1/4 is because it said the word quarter. 1 quarter is worth 1/4. If they would have said monthly, for instance, my account that I have at First Western is compounded monthly, which means my number would have been 1/12. not 1/4. Okay? So be careful with that, or make sure you read what it says. Then, as far as the next part goes, it says amount at the end of the first quarter. And it says 2,000 plus 40. What's 2,000 plus 40? $2,040. Good. And that was part A. Part B, it says interest for the second quarter. Now what's changed is it's 2,040 times 0.08 times 1/4. Now, what I want you guys to see is, do you notice that the process was the same from here to here? This was the first quarter, this is the second quarter. I multiplied it by the same numbers. The only thing that changed was this number here. Your principal changes every time that you have interest calculated. So now, here's how I type this in to make it easier for me. It's 2,040 times 0.08 divided by 4. Why did I divide it by 4 instead of multiplying it by 1/4? It's the same thing. Dividing by 4 and multiplying by 1/4 is the same thing. When you see fractions, most of you cringe, so it's just easier to divide it by 4. So what is 2,040 times 0.08 divided by 4?
40.8.
Part C also says in that column 40.8. It's the same thing because they're adding to it. Then for part D, what was the principal that we have at the current moment right now? We're currently at 2040. And how much interest did you just earn on that last quarter? How much interest did you just earn? It's up on the screen twice. Huh? No, not the percent. How much money? $40.80. So to get part D, what's 2,040 plus $40.80? 2080.80, I think is what you said, right, Matt? Yeah. Good. Now, for part E, interest for the third quarter. How much money is in the account right now? 2080.80 times 0.8 or 0.8 times 1/4. So what's 2,080 times 0.8 times 0.08 divided by 4? $41.62. Part F is also $41.62. To be honest with you, I don't really know why they do that, where E and F are the same, so was B and C. You notice how it has that, where it says multiplied, then it says plus equals that? There's no, I don't know why they give it, they're giving you an extra point, I guess, for getting the same answer. Then, to figure out the next line for G, what is the amount in your account before we add in the $41? 2080.80 plus our new interest, which was $41.62, equals part G. What do you get when you add those together? 21. Say it again, Matt. 0.42. Thank you, Matt. That's up to G. And bad thing is, guess what? We're not done, right? But I ran out of room, so I'm waiting. Everybody okay? Or can I go to the next slide? And then to get H, how much money was in the account right now? 2122.42 times by, what was the percent again? 0.08. What am I also multiplying it by? 1/4. Bless you, Jordan. And this gives you H and I. It's the same thing. So what's 21, 22, and 42 cents times 0.08 divided by 4? $42.45, which again, I was the same number. I don't get that part, but whatever. And then to figure out J, how much money is in the account? Well, we take our 21, 22, and 42 cents, and we add to it $42.45. And how much money is in the account at the end? Okay, good. So all that was number 1. That was A through J. Okay? Now, number 2 says this. How much money, or calculate the compounded interest. It wants you to tell me, how much money did you make? How much money did Liz start with? $2,000. Now she has $2,164.87 in her account. She started with $2,000. So how much money did she make? I take the 2164.87 minus 2,000. And how much money did I make? It's like the light bulb went off. Okay? That was number 2. It's a lot of work for some of these. Okay? Now, to be honest with you, the I and the other one that was in there that was always the same twice, I don't think, if I was doing the problem on my own, I don't think I would do that. But what I would do is, I would multiply everything by the rate and by the time that it is, and then after that, we add it to the principal, and then we just keep going. So how many quarters do you do it for? Depends on how many years it says, okay, or how long it says to do it for. If you look at number 3, bless you, Sloan. On 3 through 8, it says that the principal is $900. The annual interest rate is 6%. It's done quarterly. Quarterly means how many times? Every 3 months. So what's the fraction? 1/4. Okay. So quarterly is 1/4. What are some of the other words in the chart that they use? Do they use monthly? Monthly would be 1/12. Semi-annually. Semi-annually is done every 6 months. And you said annually? Annually is done 1 time a year. So the reason why I'm putting those up there, I'm leaving them up there, I'm not going to erase them, is those are my number. When they say quarterly, when they say monthly, when they say those, that's the number that goes in that spot. Okay? The formula that we used yesterday, the P times R times T, that's exactly what we're doing there on the top of the screen where it says P times R times T. That's what it's saying. Okay? So, taking a look at number 3, just so that you guys have an idea about how to work it. It says that you start with $900. The annual interest rate is 6%. What does it mean? What number do I put in there for 6%? 0.06. And then it's done quarterly. So what number do I use for the quarterly? 1/4. And when I multiply that together, what do I get? $13.50. That's actually filled in the chart right now, isn't it? Right, that one is in there. And then the next column says amount. So what they did was they took 900 plus $13.50 to give you $913.50. All this is already in the chart for you. I'm just explaining how they got it. Okay? Now the next thing that it says is the second period interest. So what they're doing is, that's the first periods. Now I want the second periods. Okay, which means this. What number is in your account now? $913.50 multiplied by 0.06 multiplied by 1/4 or divided by 4, whichever way you want to say that. And what's part A? $13.70. Part B for that says what's in the amount, which means $913.50 plus $13.70. What do we get? $927.2. And again, that was number 3. Now, do you notice how the difference is between that problem and what we did for 1, where we had A through J? Okay, where they took it even further and listed out everything. We are still listing out stuff, but it's a little bit not as much stuff to do for that. Still a lot of work to do though, but not as much. Going down the rest of the chart.
What was that?
You okay? Bless you, I think. Okay. On 4 through 8, you're doing the same thing that we just got done doing on there. And then, let's see, 9 through 12. Okay, on that part, I also, for those, now we're just going to put words behind it. Now, when you see number 9, for instance, it says Alicia Martin Savings Account has a principal of $1,200 that earns 6% interest compounded quarterly for 2 quarters. So how many times do you have to do it? Twice, right? On number 10, it says interest compounded quarterly for 3 years. So how many times is quarterly? How many quarters are in a year? 4. For 3 years. So how many times you got to do that? 12 times. 12 times 4 is, or 4 times 3 is 12. And that's why I'm not going to give you too many of the word problem ones. Most of them aren't too bad. That's the only one that you'd have to do for a long time. The rest of them are only 2s. Okay? So, starting on page 226 and going to 227, we're doing 1 through 12. And hopefully you guys copy down number 1, because that would be a big mistake getting all those wrong. Just because you didn't copy it down or do it. Not to mention any names.